Okay, so welcome to this webinar, the Target 2020 product deep dive. We just about to get started. There's a few people still arriving, so we'll just give it a minute before we actually get started. While we're still waiting for people to sign in, those of you who has already signed in, I would like to launch a poll for you, whether you can hear me or not, so please respond to that. Okay, seems like audio is okay. Thank you very much. So I'll close this one again. Okay, so my name is Ole Deering, and I'm going to present the Target 2020 version in this webinar called the Target 2020 Product Deep Dive. It is a pre-release version that you're going to see today, and maybe some of you attended the webinar from yesterday, the introduction webinar, where among others, our CTO Tommy Jensen had a roadmap presentation. And from that roadmap presentation, you may have learned that the estimated release date for this 2020 version is in October 2020. So in other words, this version that you're going to see today is still a quite early version, and there will be a lot of features going into this 2020 version, but of course not all of them is completed by now. I can only show a few ones to you that will actually work as it is today. During this webinar, you're welcome to ask questions. I may reply to those as we go on, or I may pick up on some of the questions after the webinar at the end of the webinar. So please use the question panel if you have any questions. All right, just another poll here. I would like to know from which version you're actually running today. Is it one of the 2019 versions or an earlier version, or maybe you're not even doing any running any target installations yet? Yeah, all right. Answers are coming in. Please keep them coming. Most of yours seems to be on update 3 or later than that. A few ones on the 2000 or earlier version. Okay. Yeah, please keep replying to that. I'll just keep it open for another few seconds. Okay. Some interesting answers here. Thank you very much. It seems like 2/3 of you are on the 2019 update 3 or later. So of course, you should consider whether you want to update or not when this 2020 version is released in October. Of course, we will always recommend that you get onto the latest version, even though that you may think that this is a kind of a major release simply due to the version number 2020. Well, it's just a kind of evolution of all the releases that we do. For instance, the Target 2019 update 3, even though that was an update version, it actually contained so many new features, so it could have been a major version as well. So there's really nothing to hold you back when we get out there with a new version. Just go on and try to install it. All right, let's move on here. The agenda for today is this one here. The two features I'm going to actually show you some parts of in the 2020 version are something related to maps. Previously, we had, or still in the 2019 version, we have different types of maps. We have maps for placing dots on the map. We have other maps for placing areas on maps. but in the 2020 version, you'll see that these maps are being unified into one map type, where you can actually work with both, and you can actually work with both the data and the areas at the same time in the map. Furthermore, and I think is one of the more exciting things, is that we now will support longitude and latitudes as well. So it becomes extremely easy if you have these, let's say, 1,000, 3,000 data points, which would be very tedious in earlier versions to map manually into your world map or country map or whatever as dots. There'll be a lot of work going on there. Now you can just pick it automatically from their respective longitudes and latitudes. And furthermore, with these longitude and latitudes, maybe you have mapped, let's say, 3,000 dimension members onto your map. If another dimension member should go in there, maybe a new customer, well, if they go onto your dimension table with their name and longitude and latitude, it will be automatically picked up by the map and placed in the correct place on the map. Another new things to maps will be heat maps, and I'll also show you what can do this in the current state. Then we got something which is currently called statistical logging. It's a new thing that we're going to do with regard to logging. It's a one-click logging thing if you want to. When you get this 2020 version, you'll be able to say that, yes, I would like to have logging. And once you click that button or whatever it's going to become, it will automatically speed up a database, actually a cloud-based database, prepared for all your logging requests, all your logging data actually. And also it will create a data model automatically directly upon that database. And furthermore, you'll also get some predefined dashboards and reports, etc., with things you can do. And as it says here, you will be looking into usage data and metadata, so names of your documents, measures and dimensions, and how they have been used, or maybe how they have not been used, for instance. Actually, we'll be adding more to this statistical logging. We'll be adding things like scheduled jobs, etc., and some governance things in the future. But right now, I'll be able to show you these things about usage data and metadata. The other things over here on the right-hand side, selected 2020 features. I'll just talk you through these things because I can't really show you anything yet. They haven't been, or they're not in a state where I can actually demonstrate it in the product itself. So I'll just give you a few more ideas of what these will actually do in the 2020 version. And I got about an hour for this webinar, so I figured that maybe I wouldn't be able to fill out an hour with just these things here. So I picked up a few selected 2019 features, which I think is interesting. For instance, this one, fit to page width. It's a new thing that appeared in the 2019 update 4 version. And maybe some of you haven't really seen what you can do with this. It's something related to smartphone layouts. I'm not sure what you can do. Report iteration was another great thing in the 2019 update 3, together with scheduled publishing as well. So if time allows, I'll be showing those things as well. Right, let's move into the product itself. So here I got a Target 2020 pre-release version. And I'll just be logging into the Windows client here. And let's look into the map things at first. Now, let's start off very simple. I'll just create a dashboard here, and from my standard demo data, let's do, a crosstab here, number of sales, and maybe together with countries. So we got this data, and we like to map that to a map, and to change the object type, you can do it from here. But now we got this unified map type here. So I'll just use that. It goes there, default, it'll show the world map. And when we go into properties here, as you could see, nothing has been mapped as of yet. But to map things, we'll now need to go to the location part here. And here you have options for horizontal, vertical, in percent for top left corner. So that is if you want to add dots over here, it'll just go in by 10 by 10% or whatever, wherever you put it. Later on, we'll look into this longitude latitude option here. But right now, if you want to map Canada here, if you point to Canada, you can see over here you got two options which you can drag. You can either drag it as a dot or as an area. So if I drag my area, put it on Canada, we got Canada colored in this way. And of course, we could do something similar with, let's take Germany, that'll be easier to see, and put it over here as well. So now I've got these two maps as areas. And Denmark, for instance, maybe we like to map that as a dot. So we could put a dot here, and France as well, maybe as a dot. So you can see you get this mixed thing of areas and dots. Now, having a dimension like this with just countries, maybe it doesn't really make sense that some of them are areas and some of them are dots. Maybe it would make more sense if you have countries as areas and then maybe cities or regions or counties or whatever, then pointed as dots, of course, on top of your area. Now I'll just put Denmark on top of Canada here. Didn't happen. Oops, that one seems to be disappeared. I'll try with Italy instead. So we've put Italy here, or maybe up there. You can see I can place a dot on top of the area if I want to. So that was very simple. Let's try to actually use the longitude and latitude option. And I think I'll just do a new one here. So let's do another blank dashboard here. And I'll start with a crosstab, and here I already prepared a small cube, this one here, and it's actually very simple. It just have a single measure called confirmed, and then we have some locations up here. And location in this case will be countries. We just try to put it in here. And you can see it, so you'll have countries here and confirmed. Actually, these confirmed numbers, it's data picked up from from Johns Hopkins. It's COVID-19 confirmed cases in these individual countries by latest reports. I think they'll be from yesterday. But I would like to map these on a map, of course. But you can also see here I got latitude and longitude information. And actually, these are just three attributes of the same dimension here. But as you may notice here, these two other attributes, latitude, longitude, also what we call either member properties or attribute relationships to my location dimension. I'll just put it in here. So I put in latitude, I put in longitude as well, it goes there. And one of the main reasons for why you should use member properties is that it's due to request performance. Using member properties like this is much quicker than if you actually try to create with three separate attributes. If I did another crosstab here over there and try to do the same thing with location and then the other two attributes like this, I'll just put it over here. You can see that it will actually think that these are three separate dimensions or three separate attributes, and it will start producing. I need to have them all on the same axis here, like this. But it will start to produce subtotals for each, and just producing these subtotals will actually be a huge hit on your performance. So that's why the member property option that I used over here is actually the preferred one. So I'll just delete this one again. Now, before I actually turn this one into a map, maybe you'd like to see, or I would like to show you how you actually define such a dimension. It's not really hard if you know how to define dimensions in a data warehouse. Here I'm using an SQL Server analysis services project. That's what we got over here. We got a cube, and the dimension that I actually created is the one we're looking at here. So it's from this source table. I'll just show you what we got in there. So it's just a table with the locations. That'll be the country names. And also you can see some of the countries like Australia here. We got those territories as well for that. And then we got the longitude, latitude information, then the measure itself confirmed here. So those actually three columns apart from the measure column, I use that as attributes over here. And maybe you can see it, but my location attribute is my key attribute. And if I don't do anything else, then the other two attributes will actually be related attributes to my location dimension. So this is essentially how you set it up a dimension with attribute relationships or with so-called member properties. And that's what we then saw here, my location dimension with those two member properties. All right, let's turn this one into a map. I'll just make sure that it fills out my full page here. And if I go here, properties, and turn it into a map, it goes there. Now we just need to tell the system how to map these things. And of course, we're going to use the longitude and latitude information we got in there. The map is the right map, the world map in this case. So locations. This time we actually want to use longitude and latitude option here. Before you can do that, we need to kind of define the map edges here. Now this is the full world map, so you might think this is directly from the North Pole to the South Pole and from east to west as much as we can see. So north latitude in that case would be 90, west latitude would be minus 180 degrees and plus 180 degrees east longitude. And you can see the east longitude is this one over here. Now the south latitude in this case, it's actually not all the way down to the south poles. We're actually missing Antarctica here. So I have found out that in this case, minus 15.8.5 will be the proper one to choose here. So this is a setting you need to do once for a map. And as you'll see later on, I'll be doing that for a US map as well. Of course, the US map here has the different longitude, north, south, west, and east longitudes and latitudes. But I'll just apply this and, well, so far so good. Now I can go here and select data for longitude, latitude. And that's just a matter of looking into the table that I get behind my map here, the label you saw just a few minutes ago. And then from that table, pick up your longitude information and your latitude information like this. And once I apply this, you can see it will then auto map all of these members as you see them here into this map. So if I click OK here, we get these dots placed with their longitude and latitude information. Now in this case, we are using random colors. The dot seems to be sized according to the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases. So in US, you can see we are already past the 2 millions. Brazil near to 1 million and 500,000 for Russia, for instance. Okay. Now, the thing about mixed maps, if I go here and change a few properties on this one here, for instance, I would like to change the size of my dots that we see over here. So maybe, yeah, according to value, it's okay, but maybe I would like to have them as small as possible, very small. I just click OK here, so you can see generally the dots got smaller, but we can see the difference in sizes. But furthermore, if we look into the data here, and I think if I scroll to the bottom or maybe, yeah, up here, you can see I actually got Apart from the Australian regions here, or territories, we also got Australia by itself, and this is just the sum of these things here. This is something I did myself to the data. And likewise, I've done something similar for Canada. So the Canadian territories here is being summed up into Canada, and also we got some Chinese regions down here, and I summed that up to China in total. Now these China, Canada, and Australia data, they actually go in as dots here. Is this one here, and we got one for China. I probably won't be able to find it, but Canada is up here. What if you want to make this kind of a mixed map? So you could go into properties then, and then into your locations and find these. Australia, it was actually right here, this one here, and then just decide, all right, well, we put it in with the correct longitude, latitude here, but now I want to see that Australia total, let's say that as an area. So just put it as an area over there. And I could do something similar with the Canada. So if I go down here, Canada and China as well, those were the three where I actually prepared this data for being summed up on the country level. It's a bit hard for me to actually put it into China, so maybe I need to zoom in here and then China. There you go. So, okay on that, and that'll produce something like this. And for instance, if we go here, source data, location, add that to my criteria bar, and then just search for Australia. We got Australia by itself, but also the Australian territories here. Select all of those and click OK, then we can zoom into Australia. So you can see that we get this mixed map of auto-located dots for the Australian territories here, South Australia, Victoria, Tasmania, etc. And then we got the colored area with the total of Australia in this case. So that, I think, is a nice feature you can get from this. Now, these things that I did here was done upon existing data. And now what if you now get data for a new country? And I think in this case, I actually mapped more or less all the existing countries. I'm not sure, but anyhow, I have a small gimmick here. You may have heard about Atlantis, and the Atlantis sank maybe somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. And some people say that legend is that it was somewhere here outside of the Gibraltar, maybe here. So I actually created something here, and I'll just have to go here and run a small script. And this small script would just add Atlantis to my source data table. So I'll just run it from here. So having done that, we could also go here. This is actually the table here, and well, just execute that. And this has then added an extra row here now, Atlantis at these coordinates, longitude, latitude, and I put in a huge number here. I think it's 5 million confirmed case, so it becomes a large dot. So having done that, going back to the map here, then just doing a refresh here, and you can see you get a new map here. I'll show you a new dot here, Atlantis with 500,000. So this is an extremely useful feature here, that if you have all of these dimension members by longitude, latitude, and you add new to it, that will automatically go into the maps that you're already using. Okay, so let's have a look at another example on using these new maps. So if I go here and create a new dashboard, blank dashboard, this one here, and I'll just switch to a different cube. I got one here with also these COVID-19 confirmed cases, but now for US. And let's just have a look at the data themselves. So I got something called combined key here, but the combined key is actually counties in the US. So we got Abwell in South Carolina, US, etc. And it's actually a fairly long list that we got here. So if I scroll down here, you can see it goes on, and I think it's a little bit more than 3,000 counties that we're looking at here. And for these, I also get latitude and longitude information, but in this case, this is actually a thing because it's coming from the data discovery option in this case, that I cannot add these as longitude, latitude, or maybe you have another reason for not having them as member properties on your key attribute. So in this case, I'll just need to add them. Maybe I shouldn't have done like that. Just need to wait for that. It goes in as columns now. I didn't really want to do that. I want to go in as rows. Takes a long time. I think I'll just skip that. Don't really want to wait for that. So I'll just start a new client. That was my mistake. So again, let's do a new blank dashboard based upon this one here, and I'll do a cross tab with my sum of confirmed cases in the units. And I want to have it by combined key, but also want the latitude information and the longitude information goes here on the same axis. And let's see what happens when it fetch data. There you go. Okay, now we back to the problem that I introduced before. It's actually not the best solution, this one here, having those as three separate attributes, but for whatever reason, I wasn't able to make it as a member property as we saw for the other solution. So I get it like this. I can hide my subtotals here if I want to, just to make it easier to see the data. So we got all the information we need here, and this time let's turn it into a map again. Goes there, but of course this time shouldn't be the world map, just the US map. So I'll probably need to go in here and change my map image, and I got a US map here. And then we need to get to locations as we did before, and tell the system that we want to work with longitude and latitude. You can see another disadvantage of having those as three separate attributes in this, as it is right now. Maybe it'll change later on, but they all three go in as part of your dimension member here. It doesn't really matter. It's able to pick up the right things anyway. So we're going for longitude, latitude, and again, we need to define the map edges. And this is again just a one-time thing you need to do the first time you use this map. And how do you actually find out, okay, what is the north latitude and south latitude, west and east for this map? Well, the way I did it was just to open up a Google Maps, so maps.google.com, and just need to zoom out from here and find the US. So if I was to find my north latitude, I'll click somewhere up here and it'll tell me that north is probably something very close to 50, and west is something very close to minus 125, etc. So that's an easy way to do it. So I did it for this one here, and I found that 50 was the right thing to put here. 22 south latitude, west longitude minus 125 as you saw, and east minus 66 in this case. So apply that. You've done that for all of this. Now this one seems to be mapped. I think it's something I had from a previous option, but otherwise At this point, it will probably turn up blank like this, and then you could go and select longitude and latitude as you did before. Before I selected those as member properties, but there's not really any difference here. It's just a matter of picking the two attributes with longitude and latitude information in this case, and then everything will be auto-mapped like this. And again, it's a lot of dots here, but it's like I said, it's a little bit more than 3,000 counties that we're looking at. So let's do an OK here. Didn't really bring up anything for this one. Interesting. Anyhow, the thing I was going to show you for this one here was anyway the heat map option. You can see a preview of the dots over here, but that's another new thing you can do here. Having all these counties, then the heat map option would be a nice feature. Notice that you don't see all 3,000 counties over here. It's a reduced number of rows in the preview. Of course, you will see all of the counties when you get into the real map afterwards. Now, with the heat map here, we have some options, and I need to put in a maximum value, and probably you'll need to experiment a little bit with this until you get to the right result. I found that setting my maximum value to 500 would be nice for this one in this case. And also the radius of these dots that you see here, 8 pixels as it is now. I think 20 will be better in this case. And opacity at 1 is okay in this case, but my color gradient, instead of this blue one here, I would like to go with a more traditional yellow-red one, this one here. And maybe we would like to do a custom selection of this. So instead of have red to yellow to red, we'll just delete this one here. So it's going from outermost being yellow to being red at the center of these dots. All right, let's try this one here. Okay. And I don't really see any dots here, anything at all. Bear with me a second. I think I'll just try to open one of my existing ones. Maybe I actually spoiled this one at some point. There you go. So this was my intention here, to get the heat map to show up like this. And as you can see, it shows a huge concentration, of course, on the East Coast. Maybe it's also, in this case, slightly due to this is probably where we have the major cities and the most people living. But it's actually quite interesting that what you can do with these heat maps here. Now I just want to simulate that if we were on the 16th of February, the data looked like this. And if we were on the 16th of March, you can see a bit of things emerging over here and here. And notice when I point my my cursor to these dots here, it might tell you that this is Franklin, Ohio, with 3 confirmed cases at this time. Over here, we don't really see what it is, or over here for that case. But if you zoom in on these clusters, you may get to a point where you actually see the individual dots, and then you can get the information here. So if you're at a zoom level where you point to more than 2 overlapping dots, it'll tell you how many is within this cluster. So maybe you need to zoom in. I'm using the scroll wheel to do that. Now you can see it's the King County in Western US with 387 confirmed cases at that time. All right, let's just try a bit more here. So that was in March, and as we go on into April, you can see things really exploding in the US, and then we got May data, and now we're up to actually today's data that looks like this. Of course, this is let's say accumulated, not accumulated, but all confirmed cases during all time. It's not necessarily how many people are having COVID-19 right now. Okay, so I think this is what I am able to show with regard to the upcoming maps in the 2020 version. So the main thing here is you can make combination of maps, area maps together with dot maps. You can make longitude and latitude, which will be automatically updated, automatically placed, mapped on your charts, on your maps. And also you can make these heat maps as you see with this one here. Okay. Yeah, there's a question here, how many dots you can actually put on a map. As you see it here, it's a little bit more than 3,000 maps, and I can see at this point you may it's I can see it takes maybe a second or two to load this data, and if you get more points like 20,000, 60,000, something like that, you might actually see it takes even more time to load. Maybe we will be able to improve performance on this before we actually release it. I'm not sure. But another thing you may be aware of is that if I go into this map here, properties, we have this data point limit, and it's something that has been on the 2019 versions where it was either set to, I don't know, 1,000, maybe 10,000, and you didn't really have any option to override it. So if you reach the limit of, let's say, 1,000, you would only be able to see 1,000 points. So the other 2,000 in this case would then not be shown. But now we have raised the limit, but you also have an option to override it. And if you set this one to 0, then it would show all. Of course, it's on your own responsibility because you may then get a heavy hit on your performance. Yeah. Okay, I'll just cancel out of this and then move on to the next point. And the next new thing that I'll be able to show from the 2020 version or coming 2020 version is the statistical logging thing. So I'll just create actually I'm not going to create a new dashboard here, but this was only to show you that I already got a cube here, target usage log statistics it's called. And in here we got, at this point I have to say, we got a data model where you can look up documents, document path, document title, document version, maybe even which document has been deleted or last modified by, etc. So a lot of statistical information here. And also we got metadata. So these are things that can be picked directly from the Excel files, sorry, not Excel, XML files, such as layout name, if you're using layouts in your documents, metadata, caption, element and type. So that is, the type is whether it's either measure or dimension or hierarchy, and also the captions of those, etc. And you can also have information about which document has been linked from one document, etc. And finally, we get the use here. That'll be about time, your time dimension, but also document user, of course, who's using these documents and how they have been using these. Has it been used just for opening, or has been used for exporting to Excel or to PDF, etc. And of course, you also need to have a number of measures together with that, like document actions, sessions unused, some metadata. These are mostly counters, so how many documents have been linked, etc., how many objects is contained within a certain document, etc. Now, in order to present this, I created a number of predefined uh, dashboards, the ones that you see here. Maybe we should see these as thumbnails. So I got something with usage date on time, usage actions, etc. And now I just create a map here, my own usage log here, but eventually when we release this, like I said, you get all these things with a one-click action, and you get the database, you get the data model, and you'll also get some predefined dashboards, and they probably go into a folder like this. Now, right now it's called user statistics. That name may actually change, but we don't have anything yet in there. But the idea is that you'll get some predefined dashboards for your loggings. But let's have a look at the things I created. And of course, I created it from the cube that you just saw. So for instance, here, user statistics with date and time. I just created a number of users, like assist user and user A, B, C, D, and E, and I worked with that for the last few days, so just to produce some data. And these data are stored in this cloud-based database, and you will actually be able to see them real time, or I have seen with a delay of just 15 seconds. So 15 seconds after I made an action, you'll actually be able to see it in this statistics database. So if you want to go here and see how a particular user have been working on these things, which time of the day it has happened and which days it has happened, etc. And also the names, in this case, of the documents that have been used, you can see it over here. So if you want to know which day the close income statement was actually open, you can see it was on the 15th of June by user A in this case. And of course, you can do drill downs, trigger in whatever direction you want to do. So if it want more, it's more important for you to know that which one was using this simple revenue analysis here. You can click that, and you can see it was these 3 users within this time period, of course. So I think this one is probably very similar to what you have been able to do with the previous logging within Target. Now the difference here is that you again get it with a one-click option. You get the database, you get the data model, and also potentially or eventually you'll get these dashboards as you see it here. Let's try one of the other ones. So if we go back here, use its actions. So what is an action? An action is either that you work with criteria upon a document, or you did an export. That'll be an export to Excel or an export to PDF. In other words, the print button. Or you just open it, or maybe you selected a specific layout, or maybe you used a trigger within the document. And again, it might be interesting to see that together with users, and of course also together with documents. Now on the previous dashboards, we just saw the document titles. Here I got the full document path. And again, of course, we can plug in here and see which users has been using what, etc. And also what they have been doing. So if you want to be interesting, all right, for which document have we done exports? Well, it's limited then to these ones here, and maybe you would like to know this one in particular, maybe that contains confidential data, and then you can see which user has actually done an export upon that. Let's move on to the next examples here. Now we're moving into the metadata statistics here. So this is about measures and dimensions. Over here we got the document information, but over here we got the metadata information, such as that amount is a measure, and we can see, all right, this one has been used in these 4 documents, and also maybe we can see for one of those close income statement that has been used in those 3 layouts within this document. Here we only got a single layout, for example, using the amount measure, and so on. And we can also see that whether it's been used in a chart or crosstab or unknown. These unknowns, I think they are related to slideshows as it is right now. Next example, document version. So you can actually see the version number. Right now we just get the build number, but I think in the future you actually see that it's 2019 update 3 or maybe a 2017 version that has been used to create a specific document. So in this case, it seems like we have a single document created from this particular build number, 16,280, and it appears to be this one here. So this one can be useful to you to when you have updated to a later version, to go here and have a look at, all right, do we have some documents that are still from a previous version? Because then you may need to open those and save it within the new version to get all the functionality that you get from the new version, but also to ensure that performance-wise that it actually loads as effectively as possible. And the last one here, this is something I did to show the non-used documents, which I think is an important thing. I have to say I cheated a little bit here because I'm actually using these are actually the non-used documents here, but the source data for it doesn't work right now. So I create this showing all the documents, but then I got a flag on those that has been used. So these are those without that flag that shows that it has been used. So it works okay as it is here. Anyhow, so if I want to see it like this, this is probably what you want to see in most cases. All right, do we have any documents at all that haven't been used? Or you can also hit a particular user to see, all right, for this particular user, apparently didn't use any of these documents. Maybe you have spent a lot of time creating documents for user A in this case, maybe these COVID-19 dashboards here, but now it's been there for a week, but user A haven't used it yet. So you can go to that person and tell them, all right, why did I actually need to do that? You should start using it. Statistical logging, as you see it here, is far from complete. You'll get a lot of more things that goes in here, as well of these predefined dashboards. It's not going to be what you're seeing here. It's just something I created for today's presentation, but it's probably something that'll be more, let's say, thought through and also with a better visualizations than I did here. But I hope you can see the idea of having this out of the box statistical log. So these were essentially the things that I was able to present to you or from the coming 2020 release. Of course, there's a lot more things that will be coming in there, like parametric roles. Maybe you attended yesterday's presentation where Tommy Jensen talked about this. But the idea with these parametric roles is that generally to reduce the administration and number of roles, right now you may have one role per person. Maybe you have a lot of, I don't know, different departments, and you want to make sure that each head of the department will only be able to see their own data from their own department. It also means that you may need to set up roles where you add forced criteria so that one individual person can only see his or her own data. So if you have 50 departments, you'll have to set up 50 roles just for that purpose. But with these parametric roles, you'll be able to pick up the information, the department information from the login, maybe from the Active Directory information, and then you can transfer that into your your parametric role. So that'll be a role that'll be created on the fly, and then also ensure that the person logging in will only be able to see data for his or her department. So it's something that should make it a lot easier to work with roles and that kind of governance in the future. Other things here, coming in the 2020 version are these relative trigger links. You may know the problem today if you have documents with triggers pointing to other documents. Now, if you should happen to move that document or maybe rename that document, move it into a different folder, for instance, then the trigger will no longer work. But if we set up these triggers in a relative way instead, it should be able to keep the trigger. So even if you move it to a different folder, the trigger will still be working. So that's the idea. And furthermore, the last point here is you will be able to make an export or PDF trigger that can just export the current document. Right now, you have to say, okay, I want to export something, but you actually have to point out the same document one more time. So it becomes a very static way of doing it. So if you just have this export the current document trigger in the future, you can put it up into your general navigation bar, which will then be applied to all of your 50 or maybe 100 dashboards, and they'll all be able to export the current document. Moving on, improved dynamic content. It's about text boxes, for instance, where you want to show which criteria that you have applied to your dashboard. Right now, we don't really have a satisfying solution for when you have selected no filters for, let's say, the country dimension. Then it will either show all of your countries or by names, or you may put in something that says equal to all or equal to no selection, something like this. But we'll improve on that so you can actually better tell the end users that selecting no country means that you're just seeing all of your countries, like I put into my quotation marks here. And also another issue that we have with date ranges that is going to show you not what you may have selected or what you have data for, but what you are actually trying to achieve with your dynamic criteria date range. You'll also be able to do that with the improved dynamic content. Then you'll see an option for hiding empty objects, and it's something related to right now when you have a report or maybe even a dashboard, and at some point the criteria means that you don't have any data for a crosstab or for a pie chart. It'll come up with a quite an ugly error message saying that I don't have any data. I have no data to show for this one here. And it's not something that you can configure yourself or you can choose to go away, but you will be able to do that in the 2020 version. You'll be able to hide this empty object, which I think in most cases will solve the actual problem. Then we will be introducing an option for, I think mostly for the end users, the consumer users. So if they are working on an anywhere client where you may have designed a dashboard with a time dimension on the criteria bar, then you have to choose either whether it should work with the static option or with the dynamic option. You have to do that as designer, and then the consumer user cannot change that. But in the future, they will be able to do that. So just adding a time dimension up there, and if you have allowed for both options, then the consumer users themselves will be able to say, all right now I want to do it in a dynamic way, or next time I open this dashboard, I want to do it in a static way. So that's another new thing coming in the 2020 version. Okay, time is almost running out, and I actually got a lot of questions that I need to read through. Maybe I can reply to some of those. So we're not really going to go into any of the 2019 things that I talked about on my agenda, but that's okay. I think the most important thing here was to tell you about the coming 2020 features. Now, remember, later today, my good colleague, Mybrit, will have another webinar, how to improve user adoption as a designer, very interesting one, and you'll see a lot of beautiful visualizations on that. It's in, I think, in about 2 hours from now, so you might want to attend to that as well. Otherwise, we got also webinars or user group webinars going on tomorrow, Wednesday, for the private sector and public sector in Denmark, but also towards the end of the day, we got the international user group. Thursday, technical deep dive, and Friday, visualization competition. These things, you will be able to find more information about those, and also sign up for those if you go to target.com community events here, for instance, and going to Target Week, and then you can see the full agenda here. So if you want to sign up for technical deep dive, just go here and register yourself, for instance. Okay, that's about it. Let's see. Actually, quite a lot of questions here, so bear with me a second. I just want to see here. Yeah, I'm taking these questions from a button. The question is related to these relative links I talked about to provide an ID. I'm not quite sure how it's actually going to be implemented, but it is the idea. We're talking about this one here. The idea is that we are going to solve this issue by having, let's say, broken links simply because you moved or renamed a document. So that's the idea of this. Whether it's going to work with IDs or it's going to work, as it says here, with as a relative link instead, I think the solution will be what you're asking for in this case. Yeah. Yeah, another question here, whether these parametric roles, now my example was about transferring forced criteria. Of course, you'll also be able to transfer it as initial criteria. You may even be able to transfer other things such as whether they are allowed to see specific cubes or specific document folders, etc. I mean, all the things you can set up in rows, as you know today, you will be able to transfer that through these parametric roles. So I think that'll be a reply to that question. Let's see. Yeah, there's another question here, whether I think I showed you an example on which documents haven't been used. That was the example I produced. The question is here, can you also through statistical see which measures or dimension have not been used? Yeah, that would work in the exact same way. So in other words, all kind of let's say a negative requests, things not being used, you will be able to do that eventually in this statistical logging. Mm. Yeah, okay. I think that more or less concludes this webinar. I thank you very much for attending to this, and I hope it got you inspired. You should probably expect as we get closer to the release that you'll get another presentation of the 2020 features. At least, yeah, of course, as soon as we have released it, there will be lots of information, webinars, etc., telling you all the nice features that goes into the 2020 version. So stay tuned on that, and hope to see you back and at one of our other webinars. Thank you very much for attending, and bye now.